Emily Lebeau, the founder of Poppy Wundies and a talented model and actress. I had the pleasure of meeting Emily during a photo shoot of my fashion brand Mayochi, so join me as we explore the high and lows, the triumphs and setbacks, and the lessons learned along the way.
Hi, Crina.
Much for joining me today.
So happy to see your face. It's been so long.
Too long and too far.
Crazy. How long ago was that shoot? Like
It was almost 2 years ago.
2 years ago. Yeah.
Crazy. You didn't change at all, huh?
Really?
No. But some news are actually happening in your life, and I love to develop all these things. But before that, I want to jump right into a very interesting topic, and I want to share. I already shared with you, but I would like to share with our listeners or the ones they are seeing. It's quite an emotional time for me because a few days ago I received the official closing of my fashion company, and the last project that I did, we worked together.
Great.
Now we are together again, but for a new beginning for me, and I'm super happy to have your time and to actually focusing on something much more deep than clothing for me.
And totally. And beauty, yes.
And beauty, exactly. And one of the reasons that I decided to work together on the fashion industry, on our photo shooting, is that it's about your story and how you're embracing it. And I saw the article on Vogue, and it's so beautiful, and you are such an inspiration for so many girls that I'm sure they are deciding even to follow this, just because they admire you. And I would like to speak a little bit more about that. And I believe that all scars are beautiful. They are telling a story. And I would love to hear your story.
Yeah, totally. Well, to start off, I mean, I can tell you the whole story of the incident and how I got my scar. But even your whole ethos for the podcast really hit home for me because a book that I read post my accident, I was in college, and my thesis that I wrote was about scars and healing. And it's called The Wounded Storyteller. I'm not sure if you know of it, but I highly recommend it.
Okay. I would make sure to even tag it for our listeners. I have to read it.
The whole premise is like the healing through narrative and giving a voice to to your story, and kind of creating a reassociation, because what I found for myself was this, and I'm jumping ahead, but you have this old self of who you were before the incident, if it was a physical trauma or a loss or whatever, and then your new self, and it's merging and creating a new person that involves that old self, but with a different perspective, and it's really heartbreaking and scary because you've lost yourself. You lost who you thought you were, kind of physically or emotionally. And his point in the book, which I found, was that telling your story, which requires listeners, you need people to hear these stories, helps you figure out yourself and your own thoughts and your own path or your new path. So anyways, I think even just the process of this conversation is so therapeutic.
Yeah, figure out about yourself and healing.
Totally. And it takes a moment to hear your own thoughts to figure it out. So just talking is so helpful.
I totally agree with that. And I actually can recommend you as well a podcast that has been an episode where it's exactly about that, how it's a coach, Lizzie, that she's helping people to actually, they are even entrepreneurs, that they are actually focusing on their vulnerability. And it's a story about a lady that she came from Mexico when she was very young in San Francisco. Now she has a very big position. And she was never telling her story, how she has been bullied, that she was not speaking correct English. And when she switched and started to share her story, she really started to heal. And people start to see.
People are totally attracted to that. Yeah. Brene Brown is my life guru. It's all about vulnerability. I love that.
Yeah, me too. But let's come back to you. Let's come back to your story.
So do you want me to just break down kind of what happened?
If you feel like, if you want to share it.
Totally. So I was 18, about to turn 19, like a couple weeks before my 19th birthday. And I was a passenger in a car accident. It was like a big Discovery Land Rover, gorgeous car, one of my favorite cars, probably like early 90s. And the driver was getting on the freeway and there was like a cloverleaf turn, so like a really sharp, rounded turn, and he took it too fast and lost control and the car tipped over. And there were two friends in the back and then the driver and me in the front. And thankfully, I put my arm up to like protect my head. I mean, it happened so fast. And I remember falling, like it all kind of slowed down like a movie. And I feel like I was in a bird's eye view, like I saw it all happening. I was like, all right, we're going to go down. So I put my arm up and then we fell. And then I woke up and it felt like my arm was like waving above my head. So I was like, okay, I probably broke a bone because I feel like some dissociation. But I didn't know the extent to it. And then actually the driver fled the scene. He ran away. And my friend in the back had a skateboard and he broke open the top. There was like a glass sunroof that's now on its side. So he broke open the sunroof and was able to get me out. And I just remember his face when he looked down at me and he was like, don't look. And he took off his shirt to wrap my arm. And it was my right arm. There was no skin from like my elbow to my shoulder. And my humerus bone was out of my arm, broken in half. And gasoline all over my dress. And he pulled me to the side of the road and we waited for the paramedics to come. And then I was taken to county and I told him, I was like, call my parents, think I'm done. Like I was seeing white lights. Like I really thought I was like, this is it. And my parents met me there and I got my arm cleaned out. And then the next month I was in the hospital and had like 8 surgeries in 3 weeks. So I just wasn't a person. I don't remember really that whole time, in and out sort of. Yeah. And so I missed
to hug, I'm really...
It's intense and it's weird to talk about it, but also it's funny because the therapy that I went to post my accident was trauma therapy and I'd never been in therapy before. And so a lot of what we did was like narrative therapy of like going minute by minute of what happened and creating your story so that you can tell people. Because I'm so much stronger now and I don't even really think about it now. But over the past few days, like preparing for this, I've really tried to get back in the mindset of where it was when it happened in those 2 years. And it was horrible, like I didn't wear anything but long sleeves for almost 2 years. I never showed my arm. I wouldn't touch it. I didn't like I didn't like the feeling of it because I have a skin graft. So the skin feels different there. And I would have like my mom massage it or put the lotion. Like I didn't want to touch it. It was like I'm me and then there's this like thing on my arm that's not me. Like a big disconnect, like a bodily disconnect from it. And yeah, it took years to accept it and like deal with anger and embarrassment to get to a point where I'm like proud of it.
Anger for what?
Specifically with my situation, I think it was anger at the driver because I put my trust in him as the designated driver. And then he left me, and he ended up stepping on my arm and broke my wrist when he left. And of course it was his car, so they found him, but he just left, and so and then it's being compassionate and thinking, if I were him, I understand that fear, that panic. I fucked up. I need to get away. Like I did some, it's having compassion for that. And then it's the what ifs, which is the most unhealthy. Like, what if I didn't get in the car? Like, what if I took my own car? What if which is, you just can't do that. But in the first few years, it's inevitable that you have those thoughts. And, yeah.
It's really not easy, but I think, first of all, thank you for being open for this.
Yeah, of
I really appreciate it. And as I said to you, I think it's such a powerful message for so many that they are going into that, because some can have a physical scar, some can have an emotional one inside there. And I really think that this can give power to others, that they can.
100%.
And
100%.
How was your journey? Like, how was your healing journey? Like, how everything started? Did you already start with dealing with the trauma from the beginning, or how?
So it happened in the summer, and I missed the first semester of college. So it was my second year of college, and I stayed home, and I had to move home, and like kind of reverted to being a child because I like couldn't go to the bathroom by myself. I couldn't like eat, and it was my right hand, and I'm right-handed. So my mom was like my caretaker, and we ended up getting very intimately close, but also emotionally we became really, really close during that time. So that was that first semester. And then my mom's thinking was, I think you should just go straight back to school so you don't dwell on it and get depressed and like get back with your friends. So I did that, but that ended up not being a good decision for me because I didn't deal with it, you know, and I had like PTSD from the crash and sleeping and like trusting people and like lots of issues. So I ended up leaving mid-second semester and started trauma therapy, which was really, really helpful, and going to physical therapy. But I think the thing that was the most helpful was when I wrote my thesis about scars the next year. And I worked with Homeboy Industries, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with.
Yes.
Yeah. So I majored in anthropology, and one of my anthropology teachers had a colleague who worked with a lot of people at Homeboy. So she was kind of my informant. And I went in there kind of trying to figure out how I could somehow connect to a group of people that are very unlike me and have them want to talk to me. And so the point of connection was people that had intense bodily injury and how they dealt with it. So I interviewed 4 or 5 people, like 2 women and 3 men, about their injuries from like a very close point, shotgun wound. He lost his entire arm, like up to here. And then another girl was stabbed from like a rival gang, just all different stories that were so far from my story, but the conversation with the healing and trauma of a physical wound was similar, which was interesting. So yeah, doing that and doing all this research and this book, and then another book that came later, but The Body Keeps the Score. I'm not sure if you've read that.
No,
I read.
You give me a lot of good homework.
Phenomenal. And it just kind of talks about the disconnect from your body when you deal with trauma. And it can be even emotional trauma, but you think, okay, it's healed. It's like it's done. I can move my arm now. I'm modeling now. I'm like, what? But did you really deal with the metaphysical and mind aspect of that trauma?
So how you do that besides just thinking and seeing it? How you do it?
Yeah. I think one big thing, which is what I mentioned before, is like redefining yourself. And it's not defining yourself as your scar, because I'm not this scar, but it has also made me who I am. Like my perception and my empathy and my ability to understand other people's traumas that are very different from mine. I don't think I would have that ability if I didn't go through this, you know?
Totally.
So it's reminding yourself of that, and even like writing it sometimes. And I wasn't writing it to someone, but I was writing it as if I was writing it to someone. And then also kind of changing your perspective. And it's not this way for everyone, but looking at it as a battle wound, like you went through something. And it's a daily reminder, you know, if I'm not wearing long sleeves, of a thing that happened that, yes, was sad, but it didn't destroy me. Like I'm here.
And I think makes you more beautiful. I mean,
I totally agree. It's wabi-sabi. There's no... The tough thing, too, about being in this industry as well is that, you know, you're just judged on your physical appearance. There's nothing more to that. And fortunately, there's brands like your brand and other brands that seek real stories because that's what people want. But it's not the norm at all, you know? And so that also was really tough because I had just started modeling, but hadn't really gotten into it, and I thought there'd be no way that I would have a career in that. But then there's people like Padma Lakshmi, and like that's why I want to talk about it, even though I'm not like some big celebrity. But any story you hear,
you are working for very big brands. Don't be so humble.
yeah. But like, yeah, I know from experience, you lock on to people's stories to feel less alone and to feel like, okay, if she did it, I can do it. You know, there's some real, truth to that.
You know, it's so funny because in some way it's so similar with my story. So basically, I start to really see the fashion related to my father because I lost him in a car accident, and he was my business partner too. And when I last week, basically, it was ending the business, and I saw kind of a toxic relation. I want to deny it, and I was all the time trying to not journaling. Somehow I didn't want to go there. I could do everything. I could wash the windows or do accounting, things that I hate. Just not go there.
Right.
Just to not be there. Exactly. And last weekend I was like, okay, I cannot just, I finished to clean the whole house.
Everything.
I have to do it. And it was so beautiful, like you mentioned, journaling and start to write. I realized that actually this is part of me. I cannot deny it.
No, right.
Makes me who I am now. And look, I met so beautiful people that I can just see it in my new chapter, you know.
Totally.
And now we are friends. And now we are.
But it's so scary to take that step. And afterwards, in retrospect, you're like, this just changed my life. Like, I'm so much more open and look at all these opportunities. But it's very, very scary to like dig in there and be honest with yourself even.
I think this is the most toughest part, to be honest with yourself. I think this is the toughest journey.
Yeah. What I'm curious, the question you asked me, your answer to that, of how you kind of came to terms with that, with your trauma and pain.
One of the things was the time. And I think there are different stages.
Yeah.
You know, like you said, denying, angry, you know, then empathy. For me, so my father died in a car accident, and the person who drive was my sister. So it was like, you know, like what you said before, in some way, I was like, okay, I have to help her because it's not her fault. She just wanted to save a dog. It was such a silly thing. But on the other side, my father died in the car accident, and it was like it was a journey, and I think it's still a journey. I cannot say I'm there,
right.
But I think journaling and taking this time to myself, and you know, having at the end the courage to even stop what I did. And start something that it's somehow my healing journey. So this podcast is part of the tips for what I'm doing.
100%.
Hearing your story, it's healing me as well.
Totally. It's so reciprocal.
Yeah.
Did you end up working through this with your sister, or did you feel like you did this more on your own?
I think I did it more on my own because she's still not ready for that.
Right.
She's still struggling with that. And I think we all have different times to find, to be open to do that. And, you know, my trauma, obviously all traumas you cannot compare it, but still in this case, she has this guilt as well.
Right.
And it's, I'm sure it's coming. I think there are stages, but I give her time, and I just make sure that I'm there for her at any time when she's ready to.
It's not linear too. Like you go 2 steps forward and then you go like 5 steps backwards, and it's so much time.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, but I don't know. I think that this gives us so much power, and it's healing. And I strongly believe that we all go through similar things, maybe a little bit left or right, but we all struggle with some scar in our life.
Totally. I think, yeah, like you said, even if it's not a trauma that you can directly relate to, when you hear other people's stories, you find tidbits or moments that you can
recognize yourself.
Connect. You can, yeah, you recognize yourself. Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
So what really changed? What do you think that really changed in the way how you see life after that moment?
Well, it's funny.
Say, yeah, Emily before and after, what they were like the main things that...
Yeah. I think something that I just had a conversation with someone about this, but, you know, immediately after or the months after when you're still dealing with it, you have a much greater sense of gratitude for life and like opportunities and stuff. But like anything else, when you have some time from that, like now it's been 5 years, you forget that, you know, and then you go through life sometimes not being, and of course we all have moments of not being grateful. But you forget it kind of when you go further away from it. And not to say you should constantly open up this wound and constantly be in this sad place of rehashing your past, but there's something to tapping into it every so often because it reminds you to be grateful and to be... Sorry, there's a helicopter going over.
You are now in Silver Lake.
Sorry?
You are now in Silver Lake, right?
Yes.
Ah, I love that area.
So there's lots of helicopters because of the, there were like a bunch of protests at Echo Park Lake with the homeless population. There's been issues, lots of helicopters. But yeah, it's remembering the trauma, not to get sad, but to remind yourself that you're strong and that you should be grateful for all little moments. And like, even like leaving my parents' house sometimes, if I like get in a fight with my mom and leave, I'll like drive back because I don't want to end on a note of like, you never know what's going to happen. You never fucking know. And also it's one of those things with car accidents in particular, when you're young too, like you hear stories about it or like someone got in an accident or a friend of a friend, but it's not real. Like it's not really, and it's unfortunate that it has to sometimes happen to you to really understand and appreciate your loved ones and appreciate your life. But it does. And now I won't leave if we're fighting because it just, you don't, what if something happens, you know?
All the time.
Yeah.
How you are dealing with trust? Because at the end, trust, even trusting in who you are driving, how you are dealing with this trust.
Totally.
And how you are dealing with going with someone who is driving the car as well.
Yeah. Well, more on the technical side with driving, I'm a lot more comfortable when I'm driving. So I'd much prefer to either be the driver or I'll meet you there and I'll drive. I can drive in the car with people, and I have like some friends who I trust more than others just in terms of safety. But yeah, on the technical driving side, I prefer to be in control. I didn't have a fear of cars in general, but yeah, I had a fear of being not in control. And I think that sort of became an issue for me internally, control after that point in many ways. I think, and it's a balance still, but especially with being in the industry, but like control of eating and like body after, and like just needing to feel like I have some sense of like, I'm grabbing this and like if I'm going to fuck it up or if it fucks up, I'm the one who's going to fuck it up. And it's tough. And I still struggle with that. Kind of
how do you deal with that? Like, do you have moments when you see it and you try to find solutions? Because at the end of the day, you cannot control everything, Emily.
No, totally. There are moments, and like I've kind of just recently started getting into meditation. I've read a lot about it and like understand it theoretically, but never sat and did it. Even the 10 seconds that we took before this interview, you just said to close your eyes and take a deep breath and think about how you want this to go in the way that we want it to go. And I honestly, I can't say I'm good at that. I struggle with that. But those moments are so helpful because it reminds you to do that. I can't say I'm good at it. I definitely still struggle.
What I learned recently about that, I mean, I have the same, and I feel like I somehow took even the fear of my sister or my father, because since then I am really scared to be in the plane and in the car. And I was wanted to say, like in the plane, you cannot drive, you cannot pilot the plane. So you have to just trust.
Self control. Right.
And I'm learning to deal with trust. And everything at the end for me, it's going to trust in what's happening.
Totally. And it's a release. I had a conversation with a friend of mine about AA and the book and this trust in a higher power. And not to say that we don't have control over our own lives, because I was kind of playing devil's advocate and was like, if you trust in this higher power, whatever it may be, religious or not religious or spiritual, does that mean that then you don't have any like volition over your own life and that just everything is up to some power? And no, that's I took the wrong thing from that. It's you have control over your life, but for these bigger themes, you have to trust that there's something bigger than you. And and it's a very hard thing to do. And again, it's something I get theoretically, but I haven't fully tapped into my spiritual side with that. I'm not there.
It's very hard, but I think this in a way helps, because you somehow feel that, okay, it's someone that I'm in the hands of someone. So at the end of the day, especially when I'm in a moment when a turbulence is in the plane, I'm like, okay, if it's meant to be, okay, I trust.
Totally.
And this is something changing. But
there is a calm and like your heart rate sort of slows. And it's also the idea that my partner tells me a lot, even in day-to-day things with like issues, which you know all about. And I'm only learning now with production that nothing goes right ever, that it's a wave. Like you said, like the turbulence of a plane, like you're on the wave and it's intense and it's turbulent, but eventually you will not be on the wave and it will be solid for a moment and then it won't be again. And it's like
being a roller coaster.
And it's being okay with that. And that's the letting go. I think it's like, it's wild. The second you think you like understand yourself and you got there, something happens and you're now falling. Like, it's never
time. That's
right.
Otherwise it'll be boring.
Totally. And I think maybe this accident happening at the age it did taught me that earlier than I would have realized it if it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's true. Speaking about control, tell us a little bit about your lifestyle, because I noticed when we had our photo shooting, you were really paying attention of your healthy lifestyle, what we order, from where we order. Tell us a little bit more. Let's move it a little bit, and I'm sure you want to learn more.
I guess in that way I'm a pretty cliche LA gal, but I'm pretty conscious of what I eat. I don't eat meat. I'm pretty much a vegetarian, pescatarian. I eat fish. And I think a part of that is being in this industry and growing up in LA. And since my accident, I think with therapy, I've learned to have a better relationship with food in particular, because I think that's where a lot of that control after the accident fed into, which I think is common or relatable to some women. It's tough in the industry as well. I think this last year of being on set less and not working as much at first freaked me out, and I was like, I'm not making money, whatever. But then when I took a step back, I realized in a lot of ways I was a lot happier. Like, I wasn't thinking about what I was eating and worrying so much about it, and I was actually working on this project, my underwear and whatever, reading books, things that actually excite me and I enjoy, and I'm not thinking so much about the physical. So that actually has been a positive through this experience. Not that I want to stop modeling, but I think that break at least gave me some distance from it. But yeah, eating healthy is something that's definitely important to me, and I'm not super strict, like I won't eat carbs ever. I follow the 80-20 rule for the most part with eating.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, I try to. But it definitely gives me way less anxiety now, having such space for modeling, because it's just not on my mind all the time.
Oh, so you feel this stress, like when you are going to a photo shooting, you feel this stress. And I mean, the way how you transform, it's unbelievable. And I remember we were on on that day, and it was super cold in LA. Luckily, I don't know what was happened. And
Yeah.
it was super cold, and you had to wear some very summery clothes. And I was looking at you. I don't know if you noticed, I took out my jacket because I was like, I cannot be in a warm jacket and Emily freezed. And I was like, I am there for her. I am
The rarest thing for a client to do.
but I was like, this is really like, but the way how you behave from the moment when the camera was on, it was unbelievable. It was really like how you deal with that, how you transform, because you really transform.
It's funny specifically with temperatures because I'm so sensitive to being cold. Like I hate being cold. I'd much rather, I mean, I hate being too hot too, but I'd much rather be too hot. And that's
Luckily you are in LA. Luckily you are in a good.
But it does get cold. That you can attest. That day was cold. Yeah, it is interesting. You're like, and I've talked about this with some other friends I've shot with, but you kind of like, I just get into like a, not military, but I'm just like, I have to get through this. And I kind of just I don't shut down, but I shut down to a point where I don't let that voice in my head just like complain and be annoying. And I do kind of insulate. And then when the camera comes on, I can, whatever. It's like acting, I guess. You like,
because you're doing that too. You are playing, you know.
Totally. So it is a bit of that. And then the camera stops and I'm like, just like deep breaths and like, you're going to get through this. It's funny. I don't know. It's like a survival mechanism almost.
Yeah, I was really impressed. By the way, how you were dealing the whole day. How are you dealing with the confidentiality even during, besides the whole story that we said? But I really believe that doing what you're doing, you all the time have to deal with no refuses from after a casting, and even on the set, you really have to give everything. How you deal with that?
Right.
Is it again the same part as being like an actress? You just take that role,
right?
But on the other side is the emotional side, you know, like.
Totally. I think partially, yeah. I think with experience, you like learn to take things less personally, which I think has helped me even in my social life too with castings, because you hear no all the time. And it's learning to separate yourself from your industry, which is why it's always been important to me to do other things besides just model, because it's so hard. You can say like, oh, I'm not going to get attached. But like when your life's work and what you are defined by and how you make money is fully your face and the shape of your body, how do you not connect that? And it's so fucked. And I had like a full like breakdown beginning of COVID. Like, what am I doing with my life? I don't stand for these things, and I'm doing it and I'm feeling it. But that's why I think I've always been interested in pursuing other things while modeling, so that I have that balance and I'm able to realize, oh, my worth is not just this. But luckily, I'm also really lucky, I feel like, in general, of booking jobs like your company and people that care about the person and like want to have these conversations, because we chatted about this even before your podcast, and it is rare to find people who really like see, oh, she's cold, I'm gonna give her my, like, that's so, I'm not used to that. Like, I'm so not used to that sort of empathy. I feel like in this business, but there are a lot of course, there's a lot of, I'm not shit talking the whole.
I'm sure they are, and I'm sure you are even attract them, these nice people, you know, like I'm sure.
Totally give off that energy. Totally.
Yes.
Two-way street for sure.
So I'm very curious about your entrepreneurship lifestyle. And I'm so curious. I have so many questions because it's so funny, because now we are on the other side of it.
I know, and now I need your advice for everything. Totally.
I'm there. We can talk about it. I would love to help you. Tell me how everything started. I suppose during the COVID, was your idea even before that?
So yeah, I had started very DIY embroidering underwear about 3 years ago. My mom taught me how to embroider on a matzah cover. Actually, this time of year was Passover 3 years ago. And I started embroidering on like Hanes underwear and stuff and just selling it on Instagram. And then, yeah, around February, March of last year, I decided to manufacture my own underwear and really make it a real project. And then, COVID happened, which was kind of great because it gave me all this time to actually do it. And I was working with a consultant for a bit, and she kind of introduced me to a bunch of factories and places, and I was getting my bearings. And then I launched in December officially. With just I just make one style of underwear and then a couple of different embroideries. And then I came out with sweatpants and an art newspaper that I printed and new style coming in.
So cool. And you have to go to a different categories as well, or you want to?
Yeah, I love intimates, and that just seemed so personal for embroidery, because I don't think it's a piece of clothing that isn't normally embroidered, and it's something that's either for you or for who you're with. It's just, there's something unique and intimate about that. But I don't see it just being intimates. I kind of see it as this stream of consciousness project. And like with the newspaper, I found just the moment of like this craving for connection and stories and friends was so necessary. So I asked, it was about 8 or 10 friends of mine, like painters, artists, poets. I have a chef who made me a recipe. Yeah, he's great. We printed this cute little card that comes in the newspaper. I should send you some. I would love to get your address.
Thank you. I would love to.
Yeah,
I'd love to.
So like that.
So inside you have a recipe.
Okay. There's a little recipe card with like drawings, and I wonder if I have one here. Yeah, and I just felt super important for the now. And I feel like defining the whole brand with like one sentence just doesn't make sense, because I think it's going to evolve and change with the moment, you know?
Totally.
Right. Which is not always what someone wants to hear. Not you, but like if you're being interviewed about your brand or your business, there's not a quick snapshot of a sentence you can pull, but I also don't think that's realistic to say this is what it's going to be for the next. You don't know. Similar to trauma and accident, like you have no idea where it's going to go.
Yeah, and you have to listen your heart, and the fix will come. But, sounds very easy and cool, but actually you had to learn so much. Like you mentioned about production.
No, I was like, I'm making like a simple pair of white underwear. It's going to be so easy. And like the hardest is so hard.
Yeah.
So hard. And the other thing that I think, I feel like any artist kind of struggles with this thought of like, I'm a poser. Like I'm pretending to know what I'm doing, and I have no idea. I'm not like a real designer. I'm not a real, and it's those thoughts that I think everybody has at some point with their business or their career. And it's remembering like everyone has those thoughts. And actually, if you have those thoughts, that probably means you're more of an artist. But it's really hard. Like it's very hard to do it on too.
I think if you like it, like if you if you see that side, if you are like, you like it, what you're doing, even in difficult moments,
right,
you get the energy back. How you are choosing the models. I saw that you really have a beautiful message about body positivity. So we speak about Poppy Wundies.
Yes, Poppy Wundies. I didn't
make sure. Yeah, I will make sure that I will tag that everyone can see. How you choose your model?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, but because I launched, and a lot of this has been during COVID, my ability to hire the models that I would love to hire have been minimized. So a lot of them are really close friends that I feel comfortable, or who are in my pod that I feel comfortable being around with COVID. It's definitely my goal to be more diverse, but unfortunately, I think COVID.
And I think you can see the diversity on your.
Yeah, I think it's super important, and it's not like, oh, I have to check this box off. It's just unfortunate that I don't have all the resources that I probably would have if COVID was not a problem. But it's feeling with the vaccine and the current times that it's feeling more positive, and hopefully I can extend my reach for models.
I'm sure you will.
Yeah.
I'm sure you will. And you did it during the COVID, so congratulations. You already...
Yeah.
You did?
It was a weird time to release something. Same for you. It's a very strange time to recreate yourself alone,
Yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah.
Which is the nicest part of what you're doing now? What is your favorite part?
Well, it's funny because I was hand embroidering all of them before, and now with like larger production orders, I work with an embroiderer downtown. But over the last couple of weeks, I've been having way worse anxiety than usual. I always suffer from anxiety, but it was really bad the past couple of weeks. So I started embroidering again by hand because I just hadn't picked up a needle and thread in so long. And that is where I find the real joy, like sitting quiet if I put music on or a show. And for like hours, I'm just working on something and I can physically see and focusing on the details. That is the most therapeutic thing for me.
That's what is the meditation. You're already meditating.
Totally.
That's meditation.
That's true. For me, that is my meditation. Totally.
Yeah. You found it.
Yeah. And that's not, yeah. And that may be more for me than for the business, but that's the part that reminds me, oh, I'm doing the right thing right now.
And I think you have to start with the soul, and then you will go step by step to the more commercialize it. But you need to
totally
get and start with the soul.
And it's hard to remember that because you get ahead of yourself and like trying to compare myself with other brands, or like, am I doing like Instagram enough, and like reaching out to, you get ahead of yourself, and all of that's important, and very new to me too. But you're right, you forget why you're doing it if you don't come back in.
So how do you come back? How do you do that? What is your, I don't know, if you have this, especially now with the Instagram and comparing all the time and seeing, that's, for me, it's terrible. I have to say, I found
it's horrible.
Solution not be there anymore.
I hate it, but I also do it. So it's really, really hard.
It's part of the business.
Right. That's the other thing. You do kind of have to do it.
But I will give you some tips after that.
Yeah.
I have some cool tips.
I would love that. I mean, for me, when the healthiest things to do when I'm feeling most anxious, I don't want to do, which is journaling and going for a walk and getting out of your head. And I was talking to my therapist about I'm like, I don't even know if I need this because I know what you're going to tell me to do when I'm feeling bad about myself and anxious. But in that moment, that's the last thing I want to do is go for a fucking walk. I want to just stuff my face or whatever. But journaling
in nature, you get a lot of energy.
Definitely. And I took a little trip just because I hadn't been out of Los Angeles almost this whole year to Big Sur a couple weeks ago. And that's my savior space.
Beautiful. Fully nature. And it's such a special energy there.
Specifically in Big Sur. I think of everywhere I've ever been in my life. It's like top 5 favorite places. I love it up there.
What is your top 1? Now you challenge.
Okay, well, it's between 2. I have a family house in Maui that I grew up going to since I was a baby. So it's like my second home, and just the slow speed of life there, and my skin is better and it's warm and there's no pressure and I don't look at my phone. That is probably my favorite place just because of the familial part of it. And then Japan is maybe my second favorite place.
Why Japan? Because it's totally different. Like Maui, it's so relaxed and calm, and Japan, it's exactly.
I think that's why, because I've never been to a place that I can compare it to, and I've been to other places in Southeast Asia, not lots of places, but like Vietnam and Cambodia, and there's just in Korea too. I can't even fully explain it, but it's such a different culture than I've ever experienced before. And the attention to detail and the respect and I don't know, this is something totally foreign to me, which I like.
Yeah. I mean, I've never been to Japan, but I have friends from there, and
it's amazing.
I was not seeing California, LA, and San Francisco for the last 2 years almost now. And I need from you if you have some new cool things in wellness. What's happening there? Tell us a little bit more. Is it something new in the wellness or health?
It's funny. This is not going to be the answer you want, but I was listening to I was listening to this podcast on the way up to Big Sur called Conspirituality. I don't know if you've part.
No.
But it's really fascinating. And it's sometimes, it sort of discusses the semi-downsides of this like wellness revolution, which there are so many positives and it's wonderful. And there's juices and healthy eating and so much more accessibility to organic products. But sort of when that becomes a little kooky and you use it as an excuse for everything and you get kind of caught up in the powers of that and it almost becomes performative, I think, sometimes.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
it's really interesting. I've just been thinking a lot about that and how I would be if I wasn't so if I was from somewhere where where wellness wasn't everywhere. But even like my partner and I got some ramen from Erewhon the other day and it was called like wellness warming, just every word says mindfulness on the ramen, just like it's everywhere. No, it doesn't answer your question.
No, it's actually so true. Like now moving to Europe, I can really go on the other side and really understand it. Because in LA, it's screaming everywhere, like you said.
Everywhere. And it's funny too. There's a comedic side to it, and I think it's good for the most part, but it's become such a business. And when things become a business and there's like marketing with it, I don't think always comes from a good place, Not
always. Some of them
not always.
Are, but yeah, of course. So where can we find? Where can we go and buy your product, the Poppy?
Yes, so you can buy directly on my website, and then I just started selling at my favorite clothing store in Silver Lake called Mohawk. We shot really close to
That's right.
So yeah, so there's some there, and then there's a little boutique in Austin. A friend of a friend has a boutique there, but mostly just on my website. That's the main.
So we can order it online. And it's even delivered globally?
Yes, not globally yet. I'm hoping by like summer or fall, I get my bearings together so I can do international shipping. But it's just domestic right now.
Okay. I really can't wait to hear more and to see more about it. We are very close to the end and it's crazy. I can't even realize how fast was going the time.
I know.
Yeah, it was very nice. My last question. What will be one advice that you will give to someone that was going in a similar trauma experience like you? What will be, and he's trying to deal now with that. What do you advise them to do?
I think the main piece of advice I would give is to remember that when you're thinking about yourself and defining yourself, you are not that scar, or if it's not a scar, trauma. That's not who you are, but it is a big part of you. It's not separate from you, because that was my biggest issue, that for years I kept it so like this arm was not me. And in those years, I wasn't trusting. I wasn't honest with myself. I wasn't happy because I didn't, like you said, when you last week kind of just let yourself go there and like open up that box. When I finally did, which took 2 years, and I was like, this is me. Like this deformity, if you want to call it, which is maybe negative, this imperfection is me. And I found so much power, like you said too, in identifying with the parts of myself that I neglected. So I guess being vulnerable enough to like let yourself go there and realize like you are going to cry, but crying, it stops at a certain point. You're not going to cry for the rest of your life. You will get to a point where you take that deep breath and get to the other side. But being vulnerable enough to go there would be my advice.
Thank you so much, Emily.
Thank you. Gosh, this was the most helpful therapeutic hour, honestly.
Let's do it again if this is helping.
I'd love to. I haven't done this in so long, and it's really, really helpful.
Oh. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.